Once again, we return to the world of the Rise of the Guardians franchise to talk about one of the lesser discussed characters, the Sandman, and how he's perhaps the most important and powerful Guardian of all. When this film came out way back in 2012, it was a tremendous flop, one of the biggest flops in the DreamWorks canon. It was made on a budget of around $145 million, and clearly, the studio had some high expectations of how well it was going to do. I think it's also quite clear that the film just didn't live up to those high expectations. In fact, it fell very short of them. Off of that $145 million, it grossed only $306 million, which on paper seems fine, doesn't it? It's more than double the budget. They should have made a fair amount off this. Not too shabby at all. Except that's not how it works. In Hollywood, they don't include advertising and distribution costs in the overall budget. Why? I don't know. Maybe to make themselves look more impressive on paper than they actually are. Sadly, this film had very high extra costs, which ballooned how much they needed to gross to break even, let alone to turn a profit. They ended up taking a write-off, which was the first time they'd lost money on a movie since the disastrous Sinbad film. They had to lay off hundreds of jobs. It could have spelled doom. In the end, it didn't, and the studio is still chugging along, but the reality is that the franchise was dead in the water from here on out. I think that it's now perceived to be tainted. Box office poison that is not worth the risk or effort. I get it. I don't like it at all, but I do understand. However, if you know this channel, then you'll know that just because I can see why they're not rebooting or reviving the franchise, it doesn't mean I won't be here every single year with my salty tears begging them to at least make some sort of show. Failing that, couldn't they just make a short or something? Just 20 minutes. Just 10 minutes. I'm always in the bargaining stage of grief for this franchise. I mean, I'm glad there are books and all that we can engage with, but it would be nice for the cinematic world to continue or start again. We all have to one day come to terms with the fact that it's never going to happen. But for me, that day is not today. I will keep on complaining and making long-winded videos begging for a sequel. I will shout out into the endless void until the heat death of the universe, or at least until everybody else moves on and no longer cares about my screed, and I lose the will to keep going. Despite it being pretty clear that this franchise was not going to get a cinematic continuation in any sort of meaningful way, it hasn't impacted the overall popularity of the film or the extended world, lore, and universe at all. Next to Miraculous Ladybug, some of my most popular videos are to do with the Rise of the Guardians franchise. There's a wealth of fan art and heaps of discussion on social media about every single finer detail from the films and also the extended world and lore. Fan fictions of every type are out there in the electronic cosmos, and of course, there's shipping galore! Not just within the film and the franchise itself, but outside of it. There are so many decently large crossover shared universes of fan lore. Worlds entirely created by fans of different franchises, of which Rise of the Guardians is a frequent member. Oh, what was that big one called again? I made a video on it. That's right, Rise of the Brave Tangled Dragons. A hugely extensive shared world constructed by fans around Rise of the Guardians, Brave, Tangled, and of course How to Train Your Dragon. A Pixar movie, a Disney smash hit, and of course, one of DreamWorks' most popular franchises ever. The fact that Rise of the Guardians gets lumped in with them should go to show how beloved it truly is. Oh, and of course there's also the classic ship of Jack Frost, the lead character of the movie, and Elsa from Frozen, which was so notable, I had seen fan art for it long before I knew about the deeper world of internet fandom, back when I was the epitome of the phrase, filthy casual. Thus, I think it's pretty clear that the franchise has made a lasting impact on a whole generation. That it's still popular to this day in a very meaningful way. Hell, that's the whole crux of this video, that it has retained mass appeal in spite of its financial shortcomings, to the point that I, 13 years later, am still seeing hot takes and theories that make me rethink the way in which I view the franchise and story. This kind of thing happened to me once again, just the other day. I was scrolling along on Reddit, as you do, and I came across a post where somebody briefly made their case that of all the Guardians you see within the movie, it is Sandy/Sandman/Sanderson Man Snoozy that is by far the most important. Also, can we take a moment to appreciate some of the glorious names these Guardians have? Sandman's is particularly good. Sanderson Man Snoozy. But yes, the idea is that he's the one who the entire plot hinges on within the film, and that he's probably the most powerful character when you think about it deeply. I found this to be rather strange at first. Can't be, I said. After all, surely Jack Frost is the most important member of the Guardians. I mean, let's just take a looky, shall we? Pitch Black has been gone from the world for generations. The Boogeyman's no longer believed in. He has no power over the children of the world. They've been protected by the Guardians for so long. But he wasn't gone for good. He would make his grand return, and it was at this moment the man in the moon decided that a new Guardian was needed. The original four, they're clearly not enough. They wouldn't be able to get the job done. Enter Jack Frost, who's the new Guardian. He's a person who can contend with Pitch Black and fight him man to man. Or spirit to spirit, maybe. He's the complete driving force of the movie. His actions are why things occur. Sandy goes and gets himself killed. How could he be the most important to the narrative? How could he be the most powerful? When the Guardians are well and truly down and out. When Pitch is going to win for sure. When only Jamie is left as a believer. That last lonely light holding on. Who is it that goes and finds him and ensures he's still able to believe in the rest of the Guardians? Who ensures that the Easter Bunny doesn't fade away completely after Easter was ruined by Pitch Black and his army of nightmares? Who managed to destroy all the eggs before they could go out to the children? The same with North and the Tooth Fairy. Their powers were fading, all but gone. But who was able to keep them strong? Why, it's Jack Frost, of course! He goes out of his way to ensure that Jamie knows the Guardians are all real. He is the one that across the entire film is getting everything done. He's the one who figures out that it's fun and laughter that can defeat Pitch Black. That when children are excited and filled with happiness and joy, their fear melts away. They forget they were even scared to begin with, and by doing so, they forget Pitch Black. The boogeyman becomes lost and forgotten in the world and is dragged off into nothingness. The Man in the Moon set him up especially to do these things. He is the most powerful, he's the most important of the Guardians without a doubt, no contest whatsoever. I mean, you can easily cross off the big three. They are largely bystanders in the story, and they can't even fend off the nightmares to save Easter without Jack and Sandy there. Meanwhile, Sandy was really taking it to Pitch until he was cheaply killed with a sneak attack, and Jack does that whole ice explosion which takes Pitch out of the game for a little while and sends him flying. So this leaves us with just Jack and Sandman as the top two, but I figured, well, the Sandman does get killed halfway through the movie. Jack doesn't. In fact, he goes on to save the day, and his actions are the reason that Sandman even comes back to life to begin with. So, when you think about it, Jack is the undisputed top-tier Guardian. There you go. At least that's what I originally thought. However, when I read the post, it started to shift things around in my mind for a time until suddenly it all clicked together. Yes, the Sandman is indeed both the most powerful and important of all the Guardians in the story. The only character more crucial than him is the Man in the Moon. It's a shame Mooney's such an ass though. Seriously, what he does to Jack is plain old cruelty for no apparent reason. I made a video on that previously, so I'm not going to get into it here. Suffice to say, the Man in the Moon is the true villain of Jack's story for me. There you go. Therefore, when you actually think about the story and read into the wider lore, not necessarily of the extended franchise, but the film itself, and when you think about what all of that means, you can easily come to the conclusion Sandman is the true GOAT, no questions asked. For starters, let's not forget that apparently Sandy is the oldest Guardian, the oldest character in the team. He was the first of them, the first to be chosen by the Man in the Moon. Why though? Well, let's look at his powers. In his traditional folklore interpretation, the Sandman is a character that puts people to sleep and inspires beautiful dreams by sprinkling magical sand on their eyes. This power pretty much remains the same in his film interpretation, but on the surface, whilst it's cool, it's not all that exciting, is it? Thus, you have to dig deeper, because by being able to put dreams into the minds of children, and I suppose into anybody's head really, the Sandman is able to influence how people think, what they feel, and most importantly, what they believe. Yes, he's one tough customer being able to use his sand as a weapon, but the other Guardians are all powerful in their own way. North has his swords and his Yeti army. Bunny has his boomerangs and the Egg Warriors. The Tooth Fairy can, well, she can fly. And I think that's just swell. We see that if you control the dreams, you control the world's reality. Control the children that the Guardians are sworn to protect. Remember, Pitch's power is fear. He's not usually in control of the sand. That's a power that was restricted to the Sandman until those happy good dreams were infused with fear and allowed to fester and grow into the nightmares we all see within the movie itself. However, despite his newfound control over these nightmares, Pitch's power is not absolute. He doesn't have full authority over the realm of sleep and dreams. Sandy can keep using his own powers to create the good dreams that cancel out the bad. That's why he's killed off halfway through the movie and doesn't return until it's all but game over for Pitch. Because if the writers kept him around, there's no conceivable way for Pitch to actually win. He couldn't thrive, he'd be defeated instantly. He wouldn't have the power to get the nightmares to swarm the Guardians like they do, and the children of the world wouldn't be worn down by a barrage of bad dreams, making them more susceptible to doubt and giving up their belief. Hence why Sandman needed to get sniped. He was too strong. If not, there's no movie. Pitch loses, game over. He does die though, and pretty much immediately, everything goes wrong. Belief rapidly gets snuffed out as Pitch begins his rise to power, and his all-out war on what remains of the Guardians. However, it's not the end for his character, or the end of his impact on the movie. I'm not purely talking about him coming back to life either. I'm talking about one specific moment. The moment where Jamie begins to believe in Jack, and he's seen for the first time ever. Go rewatch that scene after this video, by the way, because it is one of the greatest moments in animated films ever. It never fails to give me goosebumps. The part that matters though is that somehow, despite him never being seen and him not being able to tell people he exists, the legend of Jack Frost has persisted. He doesn't quite become believed in, but his name is a common saying. Jack Frost nipping at your nose, describing the biting cold of winter winds. How would random people know to say that? How would they know of that character? I'd argue it has to be due to Sandy, who seems to be friendly with Jack and does him a solid, injecting him into the dreams of children over potentially centuries. Since he doesn't have a set purpose unlike some of the other mythical characters, it's probably been harder for Sandy to actually get people to believe in him, but yet they still associate that specific name with the concept of winter and cold. The only way they could do that is if somebody was telling them that name. It seems likely that it wasn't going to be one of the big three, because if they spoke to a child and they told them that Jack Frost is real, well, then Jack Frost is real. Who the hell is going to question Santa or the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy? Whereas Sandy, he can't speak. The way he speaks is through the dreams. I think that's how Jack entered folklore to begin with, which opened him up to be believed in eventually. Now let's apply that to what we learned earlier, that Sandy is the OG Guardian, the first of the group to be chosen. Thus, I think it's likely that Sandman is the reason that anybody even believes in any other Guardian at all. Sure, North could leave his presents, Bunny could leave his eggs, the Tooth Fairy could swap teeth for cash. But if the children don't know who's doing it, there's no way to develop that belief. Enter Sandman, who can give dreams that would serve to explain what's happening, that tell the children who's leaving the gifts, the eggs, the money, and why. Over time, the people develop belief, and since they have proof of existence, unlike with Jack, the Guardians could develop faster and have a larger following of people who can see them. And thus, Sandman is the most important and central Guardian. He's the one who determines belief through his power. He's the only one who can ensure they can be seen by children, which in turn gives the other Guardians their strength. And in the face of an external threat, he's the one who's best able to safeguard the belief of children through their dreams. Without Sandman, the other Guardians could never have existed at all, and I can't believe I never noticed it until now. I realize that I may have come late to the party on this realization, and that many of you might be sitting there thinking, yeah, no shit, smarty pants, but here we are. Before we finish up, I would like to remind you, these have all been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of the Sandman? Do you agree he's the most pivotal Guardian in the roster? Maybe you think I'm completely off base. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.